Bassmaster Elite Series champion Jamie Hartman joining us in studio today, talking about a little bit of your techniques that played at Guntersville in the areas, because we know the weigh-in was super abbreviated with the crazy storms that went through. But this time of the year, June at Lake Guntersville, every fish on those ledges have seen the power bait, have seen those big crankbaits, the big swim baits. So it gets a little tougher. So starting out day one, you picked up a drop shot. That's something that you're great with up north, but works great with largemouth. We saw it at Toledo Bend a few years ago. Walk me through what made you pick up a drop shot and kind of where you fished it throughout day one.
Yeah, I mean, it got really slick and calm with total different conditions than, we started out in practice. And a drop shot for me is in my arsenal all the time. It doesn't matter where I'm at, I can usually make it work, and you can catch quality fish on it. There's a misunderstanding sometimes that drop shots, you're going to catch smaller fish, but no, if you have the right setup in the right areas, you can catch a lot of big fish on it too, especially when those conditions change like that. So I picked up a drop shot with a straight-tailed worm, morning dawn color. This is a Riot Baits synth. It's something we just came out with recently within the last month. I've been waiting to get this bait in my hand for quite a while. And we got it in our hand, and me and a fellow competitor, Greg DePalma, really pushed for this bait because we use it so much and we catch a lot of fish on it no matter where we go. So this was a big player on day one just to get me to where I got, and then on day two, and then we started slowing down with a little bit once I got into the grass fishing.
And then when you did transition from the offshore ledge deal, which was what you were anticipating doing, it's Guntersville, June, those fish have moved. But it seems that once you get into the summer, those fish might go extremely deep right in the post spawn, and then they come back up a little shallower. Maybe the bait brings them closer, that grass has grown up good,
yep.
And it really disperses them. Maybe not all of them are offshore anymore, and you transition to the grass. You realize, hey, 46th place on day one, 14 pounds and change. If I'm gonna want a factor, I've gotta do this now. I can't try to make it to the weekend and then change. I gotta change on day two.
Correct, yeah, it was a split-minute decision after the weigh-in when I seen the guys were catching them still. And I ran into some big issues running around that lake on day one, that I had to deal with so many different boats being on the ledges. These days with the graphs and all, nothing's really hid, so I thought I had a bunch of hidden stuff. I did have a few, luckily, but it was tough, so I made a decision to get into the grass where I think a lot of the fish had moved. I spent the week prior in Tennessee fishing, and I kind of seen that after they came off of the cold front, those deeper fish were leaving and going to the grass. So it was in my mind when I got to Guntersville, and I thought I could still make it work because the water was clearer on Guntersville than it was where I was fishing before that tournament. And I thought with the clear water, they're going to stay. Well, they didn't stay that great. It had to be shallower offshore stuff if they were going to stay. And then I just transitioned right to the grass, and luckily I did.
Your day two and day three was really heavily punching the Riot Baits Fuzzy Beaver. How do you find, it's a long, vast stretch of grass at times, but within that long stretch, there's key deals. Is it the way the grass was growing that made it key, or was it the underwater contours where it was maybe the end of the deal that turned, or it was an indention in the contours, not necessarily grass? But, how do you find on that long stretch the sweet spot?
What I looked for when I seen it in practice, well, I drove up and down it in practice, but I had a ditch mouth that came out at the end of a grass patch as it was from the main river stretch. So I did fish that section right there in a ditch mouth, and I noticed there was submerged grass there, and then a grass line started that was topped out. And
two separate different deals with grass.
Correct. Yeah, it wasn't topped out, to my left, for say. It was topped out as it went up to my right. So there's an edge right there. There's where a transition is from topped out grass to nothing. I thought it was a great place to start, and I hadn't seen anybody fishing it. And it had irregular grass to it instead of just a straight line, which is always key, especially for flipping mats. So it was a great place for me to start, and that's what I did. That's where I started, and just started getting bites like that. And all I did, I punched that Riot Baits Fuzzy Beaver. This thing's made me a ton of money in the past. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I'm going to pick it up, put it on 1.25 ounce weight, and just start punching them mats. And right away, I started getting bites. And day two, I got a 5+ right towards the end when I really put my head down for the mats, and there it was right there. There's the key. I know what I'm doing now.
that was your sign to keep doing that. And so when it comes to punching that 1.25 ounce, how deep is that grass, and were they hitting it on the fall, or did you leave it down there and maybe pop it 2 or 3 times and then bring it back through, or was it on that immediate fall?
That's something you have to figure out each day and as quickly as possible, so you don't waste too much time. Punching grass is pretty methodical anyways. Where they are as opposed to the river channel, are they 2 feet back, 4 feet back, or 6 feet back? Well, I eliminated the 6 feet and 8 feet back. I couldn't get any bites out of that. They were all in that 2 to 4 foot off of the main river, and it was like I said, a lot of them bites did come on the initial, but then again, if you get just 1 or 2 as you're yo-yoing it, now it's in your head, you better do it at least 2 or 3 times before you reel it in and fire it back out again. So a lot of them did. The bigger fish did come on the initial deal, because you're trying to get a reaction bite out of them by punching 1.25 ounces through there. So that's, I did get them both ways.
You clued us into that secondary grass line. You had that initial grass line off the main river, and you said there was extra submerged grass clumps and whatnot out off of that ledge. That played big on the final day. That was where you picked up, made that adjustment. The weather changed, a lot of wind. We had talked about that. Day 1 was pretty slick, windier a little bit on day 2. We saw those ledge guys do really well. Day 3 it slicked off again, and then day 4 a lot more wind. So you made that adjustment to that topwater lure, and those submerged clumps really paid off.
Yeah, it was a actual ledge that came up onto an open area, and it was an indentation in that main grass, which ran for miles and miles and miles. And that's something you look for, like I said, something irregular in the grass line. And I found it in practice just by coming across it, and I think I fired a jig up there, a heavy jig, football jig, and I felt what was on the bottom. And then I felt the grass, and then I felt, hard stuff again. So right there, shell bed, open areas, little submerged grass patch in the middle of it. And it was, no brainer. I got bit right away in practice, and he spit up a great big gizzard shad, and it was everywhere on my boat. And I said, well, they're pushing bait up in there for sure. Just set up perfect. And I noticed a stream of grass that came off of the main river, 25 feet of water, and it was a spine of grass that led right up to it, to the corner of it. So there's your route for the fish to come right up on top and get up there and chase some gizzard shad. And I think that's where it kept reloading from, was from the main river. They just kept following it up. So did the bait, and it pushed the bait in there, and the fish were right there behind them.
So last question, 79 pounds was your winning weight right there, almost 20 pounds a day. Is that what you expected? And then going into the final day, you're in 10th place. Probably a comeback wasn't maybe in order in your mind, but there are things that happen in tournament fishing where you're like, I can't stop myself from winning. It's just going to happen. And one of those was that big one that blew up on it, and you missed it. The bait flies 10, 20 feet away from it, and then a bigger one blows up on it. Some of those things have to give you that feeling of, man, today is just going better than I could have ever planned.
Yeah, my post interviews is where I really came out with it. I had a crazy intuition before the event even started, and I've never had it like that. I said to my girlfriend that I'm gonna go and I'm gonna win this event. Don't ask me how, I don't know. I've never said that. I'm very humble at what I do. I know the ins and outs of this sport and how easy stuff can go bad. I'm not overconfident at all, and you got that weird feeling. And as I made it up through the first day, the second day, and the third day, and then I finally make it in by 2 ounces, that night I said, well, I guess my intuition was wrong, but I'm going to try to move up in the points, and I'm going to try to move up in the pay scale. That was my goal for the day. Never once, even when I cracked that big bag in the morning. I was relaxed after that. I had a lot of fun doing it. That one fish that did, what he did, I say that, but I think I could have caught everything. I think I caught everything that was there. They were just pushed in there, and they were in one spot. It was just a matter of time, but hey, I'll take them when I can get them like that. But it was great, and once I did put them fish in the well, it was more relaxed. I knew I needed one more bite just to fill that 3.3 pounder that I had in there that I really wanted to get rid of to have a really quality bag to get into the top 5. That's all I wanted to do. Never once did I think I had the tournament won or was in contention.
So that final day, we had a different weather. Obviously, windy on day 2, even windier on day 4. You picked up a Topwater, made an adjustment there. What was the deal with a walking Topwater? Could have been a frog, could have been a moving Topwater, a streamlined deal, but that walking Topwater is a great post-spawn bait.
Yeah, I took it as well, I had it set up in the box first off, and I had it all ready to go.
From Lake Fork.
From Lake Fork.
From Lake
yeah,
Fork.
This is what I caught them on at Lake Fork. I had 2 Topwaters. This happened to be one of them, and it was still rigged in the box. I just wanted something that was going to be loud, obscure on the surface. We had all that wind, dark skies, so we got a cover. Something that's going to show up bone color. You can't go wrong, especially when you got a bunch of gizzard chat around. So this plus the nose on it, it's going to spit. You can make it spit anyways, how you work it. With 30-pound braid and a 20-pound fluorocarbon leader, it was just the perfect choice for me, something that hit me that morning. Hey, man, put this on your deck. I haven't had it out all tournament, even practice, nothing. This is something I'm going to make work. I think it was the perfect choice. Obviously, it was, and they ate it. They fell for it, every one of them.
If you were in the top 3, maybe top 2, maybe in the leading spot going to the final day, are you going to put that out there, or are you going to stick to what you've done? Because in 10th place, you got nowhere to go but up. You're going to make some calls that you might not make if you had a lead, or if you were right there in contention. Being 7 pounds back, you're probably like, I'm going to put everything out here, and something's going to stick today.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The way I think, when I'm throwing, I'm sitting in 25 feet of water, but I'm throwing shallow. So I'm throwing in 3 feet of water, and it had been slick calm. This is not the perfect choice for that. It's loud, it's obnoxious.
I told you there were some bigs in here,
it
boy.
may spook them, it may not. So you got to really take the conditions into consideration. At that point, you throw a pop-R, something that's going to be, stop, spit, and stop.
Subtle.
Subtle, more subtle. Same with whatever you're throwing in there as a bait, a square bill or something, or something I like to throw is a football jig. And you didn't want to do that on them days. I think it would have spooked them up. I wouldn't got the bites. You just know when they're going to bite it and when they're not. You learn it. You get to learn it. And that right there just hit me, and that was the deal. Like, I got to throw this. And it was the perfect choice.
After that awesome flurry, you had a really good bag. You didn't know it. You were in the unofficial lead all morning. You had to end up making another call, though. Everybody kind of reeled you in because you jumped out to that lead. The final hour of the day, you catch a good one to cull out your smallest fish on this football jig. And it was an offshore place that you had fished earlier in the week, correct? But they kind of vanished on you, and then you picked that up and was able, it's set up right. Like you said, the weather had changed for the better.
It did. It started blowing south, southwest again really hard. Everybody's seen that on the last day. That weather condition was totally different than what we had any other day. That's what put them there in practice, I believe. So I had to check it again in that last hour, I don't even remember what it was. It ended up coming down to an hour of fishing time. And when I rolled over it, they were stacked up there. I threw a couple baits, got them fired up, and then I went to my confidence bait, which is a football jig. It's a 3/4 ounce custom-made football jig. This is the exact one right here. And I was stroking it off the bottom. They didn't want it dragging. Every time I dragged it, they wouldn't even touch it. So you had to pop it, make them react to it.
Oh yeah, he did.
Every bite came when you cracked it up, and then when it fell, either they'd hit it on a drop or as soon as it hit the bottom. So when you're cracking it and it hits the bottom, it just goes, and that's when they'd eat it, or on the drop. I had a couple hitting it on the way up. Then I said, they're just stacked in there. When you see something like that, they're loaded. Like, they're competing over that bait. And it was every single cast I'd get bit 1 to 3 or 4 times. Whether they ate it or not, I think there were some smaller fish in there too. But I just kept, catching them, swinging on them, missing them, catching them, and then we got a couple good ones. So it was 20-pound fluorocarbon, 7'3" medium heavy rod, absolute perfect setup, all casting rods. That's all I run, and the sensitivity is crucial.
Especially, when they're hitting it on the way up or on the way down.
Exactly right. So that's why I run this with the micro guides. You get extreme sensitivity on it, which always plays, but this certainly played. It's hard to detect a bite on a jig as it is. Take a 3/4 ounce jig, start cracking it, and try to feel the bite. this rod, you can feel the bite.
Well, a teaser for this next month's Bass Times cover may be involving that rod, that jig, and the winning fish of the tournament. So Jamie Hartman got it done at Lake Guntersville. 4 great days, maybe one that you didn't think was so great day one, but it was what you needed to win by 6 ounces over the rest of the field.